All right. Hey, this is my first time really doing this, but I really felt like God was putting a word on my heart that I really wanted to share. I'm gonna just go with it. God was really speaking to me about how to get the fire of God, how to build that fire. You know what I mean? We see some people that are really passionate, and you're like, man, how do you get so passionate about God? Because every time I get in the Word, I get bored. Every time I go to pray, I start falling asleep. Like, how do you build that passion? How do you find that fire in God? And what God was really showing me is that if you want to get on fire for yourself, you have to get close to the fire. If you want to build a passion for the Spirit, a passion for God's presence, you have to get into the presence of God. Imagine this fire is the presence of God, and the closer you are to it, the more you'll burn with a passion. The more that fire will, instead of just feeling it on the outside, it'll start to transfer to the inside. The presence of God, instead of being this thing you feel on the outside, the Spirit feeling it on the outside, you start to feel it on the inside, and that's the real fire. Once you start feeling it on the inside, and to get that, you have to get close to the fire. You have to get into the fire. You have to be in the presence of God. If you're not getting yourself into the presence of God, you're not going to burn with that passion. It's hard to find that desire if you've never seen God, if you've never felt God, if you've never heard God, if you've never felt his arms around you, if you've never really felt his love. It's hard to chase this thing when there's nothing happening. You know what I mean? And man, I encourage you, like, if there's times where you feel like you're not feeling anything, the best thing to do is just keep pushing, because God, we're not called to be feelers of the faith. We're called to be believers of the faith. Before I could hear God's voice for myself, I had to believe that he was speaking. Before I could feel his love, I had to believe he loved. You know what I mean? And it's in that moment of, okay, I don't feel it, but I'm going to continue chasing. I'm going to continue putting myself there. I'm going to continue going after this thing until I feel something. Sometimes, we praise only when we feel something, but really I think we should praise until we feel something. You're like, oh, my heart's not in the right place right now. Well, pray and pray until your heart gets in the right place. And that's really how that's a real mind switch. That's a real transformation of the mind, that once you get yourself into that mindset, once you allow yourself to think that way, once you put yourself into that place where you're going to chase no matter what, when you're going to go after the presence of God no matter what, when you're going to be hungry for the presence of God no matter what, that hunger suddenly it doesn't become a struggle. It just becomes natural. It just becomes something that you just can't control anymore. This desire becomes something you can't control, and it's the closer you get to the fire, the more that fire starts to burn in you. And the second thing that God was really putting on my heart for this is, a fire requires sacrifice. They would build these altars, and it was a way that they can praise and connect and worship with God. Worship is connection, and so they would do this as a way to connect with God and to honor him. But the thing about an altar is you have to put something on it. You have to put something on it to get that flame going, because if there's nothing on it, that flame's just going to die. And if you see your flame dying, put things onto it. Offer sacrifices to God. And what that looks like a lot of time is offering things that no one else knows. You know what I mean? I think we very often make, like, the pastor our God, in the sense of, like, oh, well, we're in this place, and in this place suddenly I hide my sins. Suddenly when I'm in church, I hide my secrets. I have these secret sins, when really, like, when you're living these secret sins behind closed doors, no one else sees you. And so technically you're like, oh, well, it doesn't bother anyone else. But you know who it does? God. God is there in those moments. God is there in those moments, and he's seeing what you're doing in these times. And if in that moment, you're more fearful of your pastor than you are of God, then there's a problem there. You know what I mean? It's one thing to let go of these things that everyone can see, to make your sacrifices where everyone can see. But when you're behind closed doors, are you going to make sacrifices? When you say, like, oh yeah, I really want God, I'm really passionate about God, but when you're alone, you never seek after him. When you're alone, you just flick on the TV or Netflix or your social media, and you don't chase after the presence of God. Listen, sometimes you got to put things down. You got to tell your flesh no, because you want the Spirit. The Spirit and the flesh are constantly in battle, and you it's either one or the other. And sometimes you have to deny that flesh and say, the Spirit is what I really want. And that's a decision, that's a sacrifice that not everyone is going to see. And I think it's in Samuel 24. David's coming to make this offering, and this guy says, here, let me pay for your offering, let me give you something to offer to your God. And David says, no, like, I want it to cost me something. And when the fire of God costs you something, it means more to you. When this fire takes sacrifice behind closed doors that no one else can see, when you know it's costing you something every day, it means something to you to chase after this thing. It suddenly becomes something that you don't play with. It's something that's real to you because you've actually given your all to it. You know, if we live this life of only giving God a portion of our day, of only giving God the leftovers of our day, of only finding ways to incorporate God into our conversations, to incorporate God into our lifestyle, that's a problem. God said to deny yourself. He said to pick up your cross daily. Like, that takes self-denial. That takes death to the self. You know, that takes honestly killing the flesh to allow yourself to come alive to the spirit. You see, Jesus came and died in the flesh so we can come alive to the spirit. How can we waste this opportunity? If you want that fire of God, put a sacrifice there. Sacrifice something that's going to mean something to keep that fire going. Show God that you really mean it. If you really want this fire, how much do you want this fire? Because, you know, I hear plenty of people, yeah, dude, I want that. I want that passion. I want these things. Cool. How much are you willing to chase after it, though? Like, are you all talk, or are you actually going to walk out what you say? Because I've had plenty of times where I'm passionately praying for something, and this is just a real moment, where I'm passionately praying for something. God, I need you to, you know, convict me and do these crazy things, bring these opportunities. But as soon as God brings those opportunities, you know what I do? I passively pass them by. You know, if you're passionately praying for these things, if it's all talk and no do, that fire's not gonna grow. That fire's not gonna become livelier in you. It's gonna take a real sacrifice, a real willing heart to chase after this thing, to catch the fire of God. I could go on forever. I'm not going to, so I'm just gonna cut it there. But if you want the fire of God, I encourage you, chase. Like, God's already given us a pathway. God's already opened the door to us. It's open to us. The fire of God is there. The Spirit of God is there. And He's waiting for someone who really wants it. You know, God honors our faith. God honors dedication. He wants to see a people that are dedicated to Him, a people that are devoted to seeking after Him. If there's one thing in the you see all throughout the Old Testament that made God upset, was that the people did not seek after Him. The people put the world in front of Him. They put other idols in front of Him. Instead of seeking after God, they seeked after the things of the world. Come on, if we claim to really know God, if we claim to really love God, to really know His love, let's seek after Him. Let's kill the things of the flesh and seek after the Spirit. And the beautiful thing is, this isn't something that's by our works. This is something that God has allowed us to do. He's put His Spirit inside of us, and if we'll build a relationship with the Spirit, if we'll spend time with the Spirit, He'll grow inside of us and He'll become stronger in us. You know, if we're constantly feeding our flesh, it's going to be hard for that one time for you to deny your flesh to choose your spirit when your spirit is so weak and your flesh is so strong. You need to deny the flesh and chase after the Spirit. And the more often you do that, the easier it'll become and the more natural it'll become. If you want that fire of God, get close to the fire and sacrifice. I hope you guys are encouraged. I hope you guys can take something out of that. God bless. Cool.